Okay, so today's lesson is 610, exploring congruence, line segments, and decimals. And there's one vocabulary word that's new today, congruent, and that's when something is exactly, so it's when two things have exactly the same size and shape. So it has to be the same size and it has to be the same shape. It can't be a big square and a little square. Those would not be congruent. Okay? So for example, these two figures, two triangles, okay, two isosceles triangles, are congruent. If I put them one over each other, then they would match up exactly. So that's what congruent. This is called congruence. These triangles have congruence. So they are congruent. Now watch. If I have this triangle here, and then I flip it around, they're still congruent because this one's just facing a different direction. I could face it any direction I want, and they would still be congruent. Alright? On the other hand, if I have these two triangles, they're the same shape, but they're not the same size. So these triangles do not have congruence. They are not congruent because they're not exactly the same size and shape. So that's a concept we want the kids to be able to get today, be able to understand a little bit. And before we talk any more about that, we're actually going to back up a little bit and review decimals. Okay? Decimals are like what we do when we talk about money, for example. We have $1.42. Okay, that's 1, and we read and 4/10, 1 and 42 hundredths. Okay, and when we worked with decimals before, and when we've worked with this, we've used the base 10 blocks. So here we have a flat, and we said a flat is equal to 1. So a flat's going to be equal to 1. And so all of these little parts of the flat are equal to a part of this 1. And this flat is broken up into cubes. And there are 100 cubes in the flat. So each of these cubes is 1/100th. So a cube equals 1/100th. And then we also have longs that we've talked about, which are 10. So this is a 10th. Okay, so a long is going to equal a 10th here. So we just have to review this decimal because the kids worked on being able to count decimals in the last chapter and being able to understand if we had, for example, this many here, how many that equaled. Okay, this would be 11 hundredths. 1/10 and 100th would be 11 hundredths. So the kids learned to count those. What we're going to be working on today, actually, is the kids are going to get to make their own shapes on the base 10 blocks. Okay, so let's say they choose to make this shape, for example. I'll just keep it very simple here. To see, they could do this, and then let's say out here. And the key thing about their shapes today is they have to have symmetry. Okay, and yesterday we talked about symmetry, where symmetry was if we folded the shape in half, it would meet exactly. The two halves would meet exactly. They're a mirror image of each other. If this shape looks at itself in the mirror on this side, it would see itself exactly. Okay, so the kids are going to have the opportunity to draw this today. And so we want them to be able to create a shape like this and then be able to count how much of this flat is filled in. Before, when we counted it, the blocks were right in a row, right? The small blocks were right in a row, or they were together as a long. But these are not right in a row anymore. So they have to be able to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we want them to be able to say that 8 hundredths, 8 out of 100, or 8 hundredths, 0.08 of this is filled in. with this line of symmetry. We also want them, so we want them to be able to read and write these decimals to the hundredths place. And we also want them to be able to draw line segments to connect points. Okay, so we've worked on that quite recently. And we also want them to be able to compare polygons. Okay, so we want them to be able to say, for example, I have two triangles here. We want them to compare those. Are they the same? Are they different? Well, they can see that they're the same shape, okay, but they're different because this one's smaller, so they are not congruent. So we want them to be able to look and tell us if a shape is congruent, okay. These shapes are the exact same size, exact same shape. These polygons are exact same size, exact same shape. They are congruent. We want kids to recognize that even if this is facing this way and turned or something, they're still congruent. If we put them on top of each other, just like this, and they could meet exactly and be exactly the same, then there's congruence. Okay, so we want the kids to be able to get those ideas in today's lesson. And we'll get an idea of that on the homework tonight. As far as how you can support this learning at home, again, please continue to talk about decimals. Please continue to have kids count money and talk about how they would write that amount of money. Talk about how much that money actually is. You can also have them comparing shapes around the house. Talk about things that are congruent, things that are the exact same size and shape. Okay, maybe a set of dishes that you have. All right, or things that are not congruent. Maybe you have a mismatch set of something. All right, and that's a good way just to get that conversation going. Please use the vocabulary. Try to use the word congruent or congruence as you're chatting with kiddos, just so they're used to hearing it in their daily lives, because that's what's going to help that learning transfer over to their math learning. So we hope it goes back and forth like that. Have them draw some symmetry for you, and talk about why the shape is symmetrical and congruent. Where is the congruence in their drawings? So have them show you what they've been working on, and do some similar things to that. And again, just use the vocabulary words, and any way you can support this learning at home is going to help. So thank you very much. This is lesson 610, exploring congruence, line segments, and decimals of grade 3 everyday math.